Okay, so let's go ahead and start. This is actually a lovely conversation. This is a memorable day, and welcome everybody. Hillary, Matt, Quinn, Debbie, Jake, and a special thanks to our guests, Kevin and Sam. So I'm going to have to duck out early today because, a couple of months ago, we talked about this irreconcilable conflict I have, but I was so set on seeing Kevin again, and I enjoyed my conversation with him so much previously. And so I'm going to hang in here as long as I can, which is at least 15 minutes. And we've got a big agenda today, including this awesome slideshow or set of ideas that Kevin's prepared for us. So, and so I'm going to turn it over to Quinn, either now or when I leave. Quinn, anything else to say at the moment?
No, you're right. We've got a lot to do. So, Kevin, how much time were you planning on spending today?
Yeah, so my original presentation to the council was right around 55 minutes. I can do more or less depending on your schedule.
So our schedule won't permit that long today, but if you could finish up maybe around the middle of the hour.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have some questions for you along the way, and if you want, we can hold them or we can ask as we go. Do you have a preference?
No, ask them as we go. That works for me.
I think from my perspective, I don't know that you need to give us the same presentation you provided to the council, but we wanted, as a committee, to understand some of the things that you were most excited about. Debbie mentioned there were some that she was excited about from your presentation as well. And just get a sense of what you think the biggest priorities and opportunities are. So if you could focus on that, and then we can pause about 5:30 and see where we are and see if we are ready to shift to other parts of the agenda. That would be great.
Sounds great.
Kevin, if I remember correctly, we had interest in some of your energy storage, and I also thought your boat on the Utah Lake was very interesting. So those two items, please try to hit, because I know those were my greatest interest. So
great, yeah, and those are some of my passions as well. So yeah, I'll hit those. I'll just skip. There were three major areas that I was going to discuss. And I won't talk about conservation a lot because I think you're all familiar with those concepts of conservation in those three areas. Yeah.
Before you start, Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt. Jake, are we ready to roll in terms of kicking off the meeting recording?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt. The time is yours.
Great.
Wait,
So,
may I say one thing? Kevin just won a Faculty Excellence Award in the College of Science at UVU too. So.
Well, thanks, Hillary. You're nice to mention that. I was a total surprise, to be honest. So can I share my screen here?
We're not getting your sound, Jake.
You should be able to. If you can't, let me know.
So you should be able to see my second screen here, my PowerPoint. I haven't started it yet. Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll just start it. And like I said, this was basically the same, well, essentially the same presentation I gave to them. I'll skip some of the key parts, but just a quick introduction of me. Some of you know me. I've been an Orem resident for 28 years. I raised all 5 of my children here in Orem. They're all adults now. I have 8 grandchildren, 6 of which live in Utah County. So this is important to me because whenever I talk about sustainability and stewardship issues, I think of my grandchildren, right? And what I'm leaving for them, really. So I am pretty passionate about these concepts. Got my PhD in physical chemistry from BYU, MBA later on after my PhD, because I like the idea of taking technologies out of the lab and commercializing them, because then people use them. I'm not into just creating new ideas. I want them to actually be implemented and used. I'm a serial entrepreneur on the side. I started 5 companies, looking to start my 6th and maybe 7th. We'll see if I have enough energy now. I'm getting older, pushing 60. And I've been associate professor of chemistry at UVU for 8 years. I've been at UVU teaching chemistry, and I love the basic principles that I teach my students. I then turn around in the lab and try and create technologies that'll help society. So that's pretty much me. Discussion outline here. The 3 topics were clean air. How do we clean the air? How do we clean the water? How do we maybe increase our renewable energy generation or production here in Orem? And so I'll go through, like I said, the way that originally was arranged was I talk about conservation, then existing ideas, and then I get into the new ideas. I'll probably spend less time, since I have less time to talk, talking about conservation and existing ideas, and I'll focus in on those new ideas that I like to talk about. So here's my initial thoughts. I think this is important. Conservation is always the least expensive option when you're dealing with these sustainability issues. So no matter what sustainable issue you're looking at, you want to always look at conservation first because it's the cheapest. However, it requires change in behavior. So conservation is a great way to go because it's inexpensive, but it can actually be very challenging to get people to change their behaviors. And Hillary and I know that, right? We've been on UVU Sustainability Committee now for a couple of years, several years, and it can be really challenging to get people to change their behaviors. And so that's where I come in, is I say, well, let's develop new technologies that solve the problems created by the old technologies, or from population growth, just simple population growth, things like that. Let's develop new technologies and implement them. But unfortunately, the downside to that is, well, it can be more expensive to implement. So we'll leave it there. So let's talk about clean air. You all know this shows a great picture of an inversion in our beautiful valley here in the middle of the winter. Just means cold air is trapped. And usually it's warm, it goes warm closer to the ground and gets colder as you go up in elevation. An inversion, it's called inverted because you get cold air trapped and warm air above it. So if you want to get out on the inversion, just go up in the mountains. It's be nice and warm and sunny. But I love this picture because I can always tell when there's an inversion going on, because you go look at the steam plume from our local natural gas combined cycle power plant. And when you see it hit and start spreading this way, you know we have an inversion. It's a dead giveaway that we have an inversion. Someone measured this as about 2,000 feet up that the inversion, it's kind of the inversion ceiling hits. But what this does is, because there's no air mixing, it traps all these pollutants. And so in Utah County, specifically, we have high PM 2.5 in the winter and high ozone, believe it or not, in the summer is our main pollutants. So those are our main pollutants for winter and summer. Ozone, you probably heard about, right? It's great as long as it's up in the upper atmosphere, protecting us from UV radiation. However, when it's down close to the ground, it's basically very reactive and can be very dangerous pollutant. I'm not going to spend much time on here, but the key thing is 1 in 3 Utahns have health issues related to poor air quality. My wife is one of those with asthma and allergies, and so it can be a real issue, especially during inversions. This shows kind of the baseline for what's considered bad for PM 2.5 and ozone, and those are the 2 main pollutants we'll talk about. Although we'll talk about CO2, which was defined relatively recently by the EPA as being a pollutant as well. All right, so ideas to improve air quality, conservation, UVX, great success. I mean, if you look at the ridership on UVX, it's been pretty amazing. And of course, every vehicle we reduce reduces the amount of pollutants that are being emitted by our vehicles. So that's been a great success. I'm a big fan of no idling, as Hillary knows. We finally got signs put up at UVU in some of our areas where people like to park and wait to pick people up. They just let their cars idle. No reason to do that. The science behind it says that turning your car off is not a problem. Now, you don't want to do it at stoplights. That's a little too short. But if I'm sitting in line at a drive-through or anywhere else, I turn off my car. Now, fortunately, my new car, I used to do it with my truck, but I'll show you in a minute. I switch vehicles, but my new car, of course, it naturally turns off when I'm not driving. It just shuts off. So, this is a great way to conserve and reduce pollutants from vehicles, is to have no idling. The Envision Utah came up with this how we grow matters, and they've encouraged us now as cities to kind of combine residential with commercial, so people can walk or bike to work, right? So they're mixed. Now, I don't think you want to really mix in industrial in there, because that becomes a little bit unpleasant, but certainly, you know, stores and shops, you want to make them closer to your things. So we've seen that in Orem. I can think of Costco. I went to Costco today, right? Costco is right there, and then you have all these apartments that were recently built. So, you know, they can walk to get their grocery and food and whatever. So making cities more walkable is a thing kind of to think about. Bike paths. I know one of you, was it you, Darren, that's a biker? Yeah. Yeah, so I found this is the plan for Orem, but you notice there the blue lines are all proposed trails. I don't know how many of those have been implemented. The red ones were the existing trails. So there's a good plan in place. The key now is to kind of push that forward and get it done. Conservation, so reducing vehicle emissions. Clearly we need to replace maybe the city gasoline, diesel vehicles with compressed natural gas. Now, compressed natural gas is a fossil fuel. I know that. I'm a very pragmatic scientist. I understand, but compressed natural gas is such a cleaner fuel, not only in terms of CO2 emissions, but in terms of other emissions like SOx and NOx. SOx are sulfur compounds, sulfur oxide compounds. NOx are nitrogen oxide compounds. So compressed natural gas, it's so much cleaner than other fuels like gasoline or diesel, that it's a great transition. It's not going to be the final solution, and I'm pragmatic. I just know we're going to have to use natural gas more, at least in the short term. And then we can switch to hybrid electric or electric vehicles. The city can do that, and you can encourage others to do it. Here's just some information, kind of scientific data for how valuable it is to switch, right? So natural gas reduces carbon monoxide emissions by 90 to 97%. It reduces NOx, which leads to PM 2.5 by 35 to 60%. So it's not the end-all solution. It's still producing CO2, greenhouse gas, but it's a great direction. I finally switched to a hybrid electric vehicle. I love that thing. It's at least twice as efficient as my gasoline vehicles, which means you have 1/2 the emissions just by switching to a hybrid. And of course, electric vehicles, no emissions at the point source, at the vehicle itself. However, they have to be charged. And unfortunately in Utah, 66% of Utah's electricity comes from coal, which means you're really shifting the emissions from being local, which might be good during an inversion, but we're shifting them really to Eastern Utah, where we have most of our coal-fired power plants. So just remember that electric vehicles are awesome, but unless they're charged with renewable electricity from wind or solar, geothermal, something like that, then we're really just shifting the emissions elsewhere. Oh, we can just say, we don't live in Eastern Utah, we can give it to them, right? No, that's not nice. All right, encourage residents to do this. I don't know how to encourage residents to do this other than as leaders, you have a bully pulpit, really, especially the Orem City Council. They have a pulpit to where they can encourage, residents to behave in the proper way. It's hard to change behavior, but as Hillary can confess, I didn't always have a nice hybrid electric vehicle down there in the right corner. That's my new vehicle. Gets about 40 miles per gallon. My old diesel truck that I drove for a long time, even when I was on the sustainability committee at UVU, I love that truck. I honestly love driving it. It's big. It makes me, I just love it. It's a big thing and it's very useful, but it's pretty much parked now at the side of my house, and I only use it when I need to move things. So if I can make the change, I think others can as well. I won't say much about this other than a lot of people don't like the idea that during the winter months we put ethanol in our gasoline. The scientific evidence is that it does no harm to your vehicle. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet saying, oh, ethanol is terrible for your vehicle. No, and it's good for the environment because it reduces carbon monoxide during the winter months, which is a real issue. So, don't be afraid of it, use it. Smart thermostats, my wife has put smart thermostats in all our homes, and there's just a reminder right down here. Oops. Down here is a reminder that in the winter, you want it 68F or lower when occupied. And then they're programmable. The nice thing is when you leave, when everyone's gone, you can turn it down to 65. And when I had a facility actually it was in Pleasant Grove, a manufacturing facility, at night we turned it down to 60, right, 59. essentially to save energy. And once again, you save energy, that saves costs, but it also, that's the nice thing about conservation, is it reduces emissions. All right. I was going to skip this one, but I won't. This is really important. I mean, in Orem, we love our wood burning fireplaces. I mean, let's face it, I can smell it often in the winter. It's very cozy and warm, but it's terrible in terms of emitting particulates. Twice the number of harmful PM2.5 particles come from a wood stove or a fireplace than an equivalent amount of diesel exhaust, right? So it's worse than diesel, and we've all seen diesel trucks. So what do? You replace it, you put an insert in, and makes it much more efficient, not only in terms of heating, but in terms of, emissions, because you get better combustion. Oh yeah, replacement of gasoline mowers and trimmers. We don't think about this a lot, but they produce a lot of emissions. When we're all out there on Saturday mowing and trimming. I hate yard work, so I'll tell you my solution to that here in just a minute. It's kind of a crazy idea, but I did it and I liked it. But these are, gasoline mowers and trimmers, because they're trimmers in particular are 2-stroke engines typically. They are really inefficient. They spit out a lot of VOCs. Those are volatile organic compounds, basically fuel particulates, NOx and CO. In 1 hour is as much as 40 new cars. These are efficient cars running for an hour. So these exchange programs, I participated and helped really throw away a lot of gasoline mowers. We didn't throw them away. I think they were recycled, but this was a couple of summers ago, I think. Yeah, it wasn't last summer, that was COVID, but it was the summer before. We exchanged a whole lot of these lawnmowers for gasoline lawnmowers and trimmers for electric ones. Now here's a new idea. This is one that you probably haven't heard of, and it covers some of the research I've been working on. But we can add electrostatic precipitators to different exhaust points or sources, and that will capture the PM2.5 and PM2 before it enters the atmosphere. This is how it works, essentially. If you've seen a lot of air purifiers that you have in your rooms, I know my son has one for his allergies. Basically, you have a fan that brings in dirty air. It passes across this charging section right here that I'm surrounding with going around with. So you basically add charge to the dust particles, and then you pass it through these plates that have a charge on them, the opposite charge. So let's say we add a negative charge here. So these are all negative charged, and these are all positively charged. Of course, the positive charge attracts the negative particulates, and they stick to them. And these are nice because the way you clean them is you just rinse them off, right? Once the particulates build up here, you rinse them off, so you get much cleaner air out. That's how an electrostatic precipitator works. This shows one, excuse me, this shows one in my in a home. This shows ones that you can install onto chimneys. So yeah, could we encourage residents to do that? You bet. And then they could have their, their wood fireplace or wood stove, and they could still reduce the amount of PM2.5. This one here is an experimental one that slips inside the exhaust of a vehicle, like a diesel engine, and it pulls those particulates out right there from the source. So those are something to think about. I like it. This is one that really prompted some research that I've been doing. And this is from Dan Rosengard. He's a Danish guy. He's actually taking this tower here in China because they have such a problem with particulates. And he's been touring China with this, and he set it up in a park. Unfortunately, you have to plug this baby in order to move the air. And so you just suck in air and pass it through big electrostatic precipitators here in this tower, and it captures them. And he's been making rings. He's called smog-free rings out of the particulates that he captures. He makes rings out of it, and that's how he's funding his work. We took this concept a step bigger by making a much larger system, and we call these solar updraft towers. So a student and I came up with this concept. This has been used for years to generate electricity. They're very large ones when you're trying to generate electricity, but I think we can make a lot smaller ones, and we really use them to move the air because it saves you electricity costs, right? Instead of moving electricity with fans, you move it simply using some physics, which is warm air rises, and we all know that. So the idea is here, you have this greenhouse, clear greenhouse material here. The sun passes through, and thermally, the thermal energy of the sun is collected in the ground and in the air below. That air is warmer than the outside air, so it begins to rise up the tower that's in the center of this unit, and you can get huge airflows here. just from, channeling that warm air up the tower. And you could actually put wind turbines around it and produce electricity, renewable electricity from solar thermal energy. But our addition would be we'd add these electrostatic precipitators here, so that not only are we producing renewable energy, so we're not consuming electricity that's produced from coal, but we're actually cleaning the air as well. And so we applied to a social innovation challenge. We were first place for new ideas. And I'll show you a picture of what this would look like here potentially. But I would imagine we could put these in and we would really be bulk filtering the air. This shows another alternative. In an inversion, because there's no sunshine, you could actually at that point, then you could turn the wind turbines with electricity. So you put electricity in instead of electricity coming out, but that would force the dirty air through the filtration system and clean it and inject the cold air up higher where it belongs and potentially end the inversion. So this is what it looks like. This is one in Manzanares, Spain, one of the first ones they had. The greenhouse, the shiny stuff at the bottom there, it looks like mirrors. It's really greenhouse glass. It's 11.5 acres. Ours wouldn't be quite this big. Ours would be significantly smaller than that. You have a 636-foot tower, and this produced 50 kilowatts of renewable electricity. This is what it looked like underneath. So our concept, my student came up with the idea, well, why don't we make parks underneath it, or put these things in parks or over areas where, we don't care. Maybe parking lots would be a good area for them. And you literally could put several of these around the valley. You could be filtering a lot of air 24/7 because the ground warms up, so it still works at night, even when the sun's not out. And you could actually make nice parks under here. This was kind of our vision of these greenhouses. And these would be tourist attractions, I think. People would come here just to see how you're producing renewable electricity, you're cleaning the air, and you're having this year-round facility, park basically, that you can walk through, jog through. You can make them very nice facilities. He also included this. This is from Singapore. These are super trees. They're just for decoration, but we could take our towers and make them into super trees so they would look pretty. They also grow plants on them on the outside of these super trees in Singapore. We could do something similar to the towers to make them look more appealing. So there's a radical idea. Think about it. It would cost money to implement, but we're trying to get money right now at UVU to build a small scale one here at UVU and test the concepts. All right, that's clean the air section. Any questions about that? All right, so let's get into the clean the water, and we'll probably only have time to do this. This shows Utah Lake in July 2016. Really bad harmful algal blooms. By the way, we've had them every summer since. They're getting larger and longer because the water's getting warmer earlier. And so these harmful algal blooms are a real problem for the citizens of Orem and actually Utah County and anywhere. And so just so you know, it's not just Utah Lake. This shows all the lakes in 2019 that were reported with harmful algal blooms. And they're harmful because they're primarily these cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is called blue-green algae. It's not a true algae. But the bottom line, these cyanobacteria produce these toxins as part of their survival scheme that they've developed over time. But they're photosynthetic, so they grow just like other plants. They're water plants. This shows they're single-celled organisms. And the reason I show this picture is because it's really hard to filter these out of the water. This becomes the real problem, is how do you capture these guys? They're so small, 3 to 6 micron in diameter. So they're very, very small. So there's lots of things that they need to grow. This shows just like any other plant, they need CO2 from air, right? Every gram of CO2 absorbed becomes a gram of carbon in the algae or cyanobacteria. They need nitrogen, phosphorus, micronutrients. So just like the fertilizer you put on the lawn, they need that stuff. So I always like to throw this in. I'm just going to say 2 things about this. At the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Canada, Drumheller, Canada. Drumheller, Canada is a fairly cold place. It's much further north than Utah, Salt Lake City or Utah County. But here's what I saw at the end of that exhibit, that back in 208 million years ago, the CO2 concentrations were 2,500 to 3,000 parts per million. Today, it's 400 parts per million. So I always like to ask, where did that CO2 go? Where did all that CO2? It was what? almost 10 times what it is today back then. So where did it go? Well, it was captured by cyanobacteria in massive algal blooms, ancient algal blooms, that then settled out and became the fossil fuels that we're now burning today to release that CO2. So that's it. Cyanobacteria is nature's way of solving this higher concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere. All right, so how do we fix it? Well, we have to reduce fertilizer requirements, right? And how do we do that? Well, these are a couple of ideas. You can xeriscape city parks. Encourage residents. I know we have a beautiful city competition each year. My neighbor wins it sometimes, has won it a couple of times. Why don't we do, instead of just beautiful landscapes, why don't we say beautiful xeriscapes, which means they don't require much water, right? They're more natural. So there's an idea for you to throw out there for how we can conserve. Let's see. I'm going to talk about wastewater treatment here, but the bottom line is this is expensive. So if we now try and remove nitrogen and phosphorus, which we've been dumping into Utah Lake for years and years, and is helping aid the growth of these cyanobacteria, harmful algal blooms, if we were to upgrade all seven wastewater facilities emptying into Utah Lake, it's more than $160 million, and that's a big price tag. So here's what I did. Some of my new ideas. This is my front yard. Last summer, I decided I didn't want to water anymore. I didn't want to fertilize, and I didn't want to mow. So I painted it green. It looked pretty good for one summer. The problem is, if you look at it now, it looks like a fake green. And so painting your lawn green is only going to work for one summer. So my next goal is this coming summer, I'm going to put in AstroTurf or artificial turf. It looks so much more real now, lasts a lot longer. The other problem is the grass looked green, but it was prickly. So my grandkids, when they came over to play, they didn't like walking in the painted grass. Didn't make their feet green or anything, because once it dries, it's set, but it's not very nice. So we're going for AstroTurf this coming summer. So that's something to think about. So how do we prevent these harmful algal blooms or mitigate them? Well, you can kill the algae. These have all been tried. Or you can try and reduce the nutrient load. That's something that's being tried, which means stop letting fertilizer and nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus flow into the lake. Those things can be knocked off, but it's going to take a lot of time because we've been putting these nitrogen and phosphorus into the Utah Lake for a long, long time. So ours is down here in red. We want to harvest the algae. And so I'll just talk about this. It really is a mistake to just kill the algae, because when you kill the cyanobacteria, that's when it releases its toxins. When it's healthy and growing happily, we've seen this in our lab, it doesn't produce any toxins, so it's not harmful. However, when you kill it, it breaks down, decomposes, releases all the CO2, nitrogen, and phosphorus that's collected to grow. It gets released back into the water system, and also it releases those toxins. It makes the water looks cleaner, but it could be actually more toxic if you just kill the algae. So that's not a good idea. This is too expensive. I think it's going to take many, many, many years to make a difference by upgrading our wastewater facilities. And so this is our solution, is the algae harvesting boats. And the idea is to take the filtration technology that we've developed. Actually, it's a modification of an existing technology. You suck in the algae or cyanobacteria contaminated water at the front with these pumps. We pass it through these plate and flame filter presses. We add a special ingredient, which is our secret sauce. And I'm going to tell you our secret sauce because I want everyone to know. It's basically cellulose or wood fiber, paper boxes, paper. It's been paper boxes or wood that's been powderized, made into a powder. And we add that to it, and that works to capture the algae. Without the cellulose fibers, without those fibers, it doesn't work. It plugs up the system and it won't work. So that was our secret sauce, is add some cellulose there. Cellulose, of course, is wood fiber. Wood comes from photosynthesis, which means it's captured CO2 from the atmosphere. So we're not only capturing algae from the water, but if we sequestered this, we could be actually capturing CO2 both from the cellulose and from the algae that we're capturing. The reason we put it on a boat is because, fortunately, algal blooms don't cover all of Utah Lake. There's key areas: Provo Bay, Utah State Lake Park, or Utah State Park and Marina, that captures, grows algae, probably because it's shallower and it's warmer and there's lots of nutrients coming in there. Places like Lincoln Beach and Saratoga Springs has a beach up there that has, so we've made it mobile because if we have one that's on land, it's really fixed in a position and you can clear the water in a small area, but by doing it this way, we put it on a boat and it will sweep through the water and essentially capture that algae. And ultimately, I want to program this to make it autonomous. So we'll just program it in. It'll go out to the highest concentration areas and go back and forth, basically mowing or sucking up algae and filtering it from the water. And the advantage of that is we capture it. We're removing nutrients from the water, we're removing the toxins, potential toxins from the water, and we're making the water cleaner, but really cleaner in the long term because we're removing these nutrients. This
Kevin,
just shows.
Debbie, did you get any funding this year through the legislative process?
We'll know tomorrow. I'm pretty sure we got it last year. We got $300,000, but it got pulled back because of the pandemic. So we presented again, we were submitted again this year. And so we're in the budget, $300,000 to build our first boat. It's a medium-sized boat and we hope we'll be on lake next year. But if they pass the budget and we're still in there on Friday, tomorrow, then yeah, starting July 1st, we're gonna build one of these boats.
Awesome.
Now, ultimately, we're going to need fleets of boats because we want to do it on Utah Lake, maybe a couple of key spots, 3 or 4 key spots on Utah Lake. We'll have boats dedicated to them, but then also elsewhere. That's why we want these to be truckable, transportable, as we show here, right? This is what it's going to look like. We'll take all our equipment and mount it to an existing boat, of course. This shows the filter presses. The cool thing about a filter press is it produces these little, we call them algae cakes right there. That's cellulose and algae that's been captured, low water content, and we could dry these and you can actually use these pellets as fuel, renewable fuel, because it would be carbon neutral because all the CO2 that burning it, you would produce the exact same amount of CO2 that it captured to grow. So it would be carbon neutral, but you could also sequester these. You could use these as a perfect fertilizer, soil amendment, because algae has the exact right amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon to help other plants grow. So those are things that you could do with it. We haven't really decided what to do with it. We just want to clean the lake. So this kind of shows the overall design. And I think I'll just end with this. This kind of shows what one boat can do. We're pumping 2,400 gallons per minute. So in 16 hours a day, that's 2 8-hour shifts. Actually, it's 4 4-hour shifts for 2 students. If students are running these, we can't make them work more than part-time. We could filter 2.3 million gallons of water in a 16-hour day. We would capture 872 kilograms. That's almost a metric ton of dry algae once it's dried, right? That's how much it is. But if you include all the other stuff that we're getting, we're essentially capturing 2.7 metric tons of CO2 with our process each day. So we can cover 29 miles a day at 1.8 miles per hour in a straight line, or we can go back and forth and cover 42 acres in one day. 42 acres, by the way, is the size of the Utah Lake State Park, that swimming area. It's 42 acres. So that's what we could do here. We're actually removing CO2 from the atmosphere because it was captured by the algae. All right, I have some other crazy ideas about renewable energy. I don't think I have time to do it. I did want to mention energy storage. Can I take another few minutes and just mention energy storage?
Yes, please. I know that Debbie was interested in that.
Yeah. So here's the problem with renewables. They're variable powers of energy sources. So, and also throughout the day in our current electric system, the demand is rising and falling. So this shows each day, right? At night, there's low consumption, and then it peaks, and then it peaks here actually in the afternoon is where peak demand for electricity goes, and then it drops back down in the evening, night when we all go to bed or when we go to bed. So demand is fluctuating all day. What that means is that supply has to match it because we have no energy storage on our electricity grid. So when I flip on a light, somewhere, some generator had to increase its power output just a little bit for that light because we have no storage. So that's not, I mean, we've learned to deal with it. We have a hydroelectric is one that you can change quickly. So a coal-fired power plant, you really can't turn it up fast and, you know, so we have these peaker plants, our natural gas power plant out over here in Linden. It can be changed much quicker, but not quick enough. And so here's the real problem with these variables. This shows you for this a solar photovoltaic output. That's the red line here. Notice that it peaks in the middle of the day, But notice where the demand is. The demand in the middle of the day is not as high as it is in the afternoon when they're not producing as much solar energy. So they just don't match. So how do we get it to work? Well, you really have to store this variable energy. Wind is much more variable even than solar. So how do we store energy? Well, we have done it in the past with hydroelectric. Hydroelectric, right, it's just opening a valve. So more water flows or less water flows. So it's been very good. But we're reaching a point where we're going to max out the variability that the hydroelectric can take. And our coal-fired power plants, nuclear power plants, right, you just don't turn those off at all. They run straight solid the same amount all the time. Coal-fired power plants, not like that. Even our natural gas power plant can be turned up and down, but it's not very readily. So how do we deal with this variable supply? I proposed to the council that we look into battery storage. It's becoming a big deal here. This shows you some of the things, but this is my favorite here. I'll show you. So this is in Australia. It's called the Hornsdale Power Reserve. It's adjacent to the wind farm, right? So you're going to need these to help with wind or solar production. It was built by Tesla. It's a lithium-ion battery packs. Let's see if I have a picture of it. Oh, no, I don't have a picture of it. But this really shows how it works. It has two parts, but it has a part that will produce a lot of power for a short amount of time, so 70 megawatts of power for 10 minutes. And that's for, grid leveling. And then it has this other one here for when you have blackouts or real issues like they had down in Texas. This will run 30 megawatts. That's a lot less power, but it'll run for 3 hours, right? It's much longer. So it has two parts to it. But here's the important thing, right? It costs $90 million US to build this facility, this 129 megawatt hours of electricity, so 460 gigajoules. And it was able to discharge 100 megawatts. So megawatt hours is energy and megawatts is power. The bottom line is in the first 100 days, right? Oh, it was built in less than 100 days, but in the first 6 months, it made them back 0.77 million by doing this load leveling, right? Because they could store the energy when it was readily available, but there weren't peak power requirements. And then they can sell it later for more when the peak demand goes up. Right, so when there's excess supply, the cost goes down, and then when there's higher demand, then you can charge more. So it saved them a lot of money. And in fact, the latest numbers I looked on this particular facility, they have paid back the 90 million easy. They've made back simply by having this facility. So it's paid for itself in less than 2 years, or in basically 2 years, 2.5 years. It's paid for itself. So this is something interesting that Orem might think about. Provo has their own distribution system, right? They have their own power company. Provo, Orem could probably install a facility like this and really probably make money while making, renewable energy more viable for the city. Anyway, that's it. Sorry, I took more than my time, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Lots of great and interesting ideas. Do we have questions from members of the committee that we could address in a few minutes?
On my question on that, could Orem do that independently, or would that have to be done through Rocky Mountain Power?
Oh, no, they could do it independently, right? Rocky Mountain Power, I mean, you'd have to make a deal with them because you'd be buying their power when it's cheap to charge your batteries, and then you'd be selling it back to the Orem residents when it's higher. So there'd probably have to be some type of agreement there, but it could be done independently. Although, to be honest, I mean, Rocky Mountain Power is definitely looking into storage because it makes their whole system cheaper if you can have some storage. Because right now they build power plants for peak load or for peak demand, right? So they have to build much bigger plants even though they never run them that high because they know they have to have that at certain times. So when you add battery storage, you can build a smaller generator because the batteries take up the peak load or the peak demand. So they're looking into it. They may do it themselves, and they would definitely have to be involved. You'd have to get some type of agreement with them because I know right now, even though they have net metering for homes, if you put a battery on your home solar photovoltaic system, they don't like that. They don't want you to connect to the grid if you have a battery backup. There's a lot of reasons for that, but they don't like it because you really are using your whole power and you don't need them as much unless it's kind of a secondary backup. Your batteries are your backup, but the grid would be a secondary backup. So There are probably some issues there, legal issues that you'd have to work out, but I'm pretty sure a lot of these companies, cities are doing it. Cities are building these storage facilities.
Kevin, it sounds to me, and maybe Matt, you could help us think through this, but it sounds to me like this is something that would deserve some future investigation by the city. Could be really, really exciting for us, and that would require a fair amount of work to figure out how this would actually be applied. But thank you for sharing that. That's a very exciting idea. Are there any other questions before we let Kevin go today? Kevin, if it's all right, we'd love to have you to be on call for us a little bit.
Absolutely.
It was very helpful for me to understand what you shared with the city council. It provided me with a number of ideas. I have some notes that I think could be relevant for some of our future strategic priorities as well. And it was just awesome of you to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Glad to talk about this stuff, as you can see.
Thank you. We'll let you go and enjoy your evening and move on with our agenda, but we sure appreciate your time today.
Sarah, Hillary, it's good to see you again. Take care. Take care, all of you.
All right. I thought that was helpful for us. Our next items on the agenda, Sarah, I'm going to essentially turn some time to you. I know we have Wattsmart Communities, preview of the annual report to City Council, and then a social media campaign regarding water. And I think those are all areas that you might want to speak to. How would you like to prioritize those today? I think we've got 10 or 12 minutes to do that.
I will do the first two. Well, Wattsmart Communities, I'll start with that. That is something that the city's starting. It's a program out of Rocky Mountain Power that's focused on energy efficiency. And they're gathering a bunch of stakeholders to meet regularly to discuss this outreach program and how they can help implement this program among residents and businesses in Orem. And we have been invited to send representation. They haven't started meeting yet, but they are gathering. And so the question for us is, they're wondering who from our committee is available to serve as a representative on that Wattsmart Communities group.
Cool. Well, that sounds like maybe something we could try to decide on. A couple of context questions. Maybe Matt or Debbie, you might have some broader insight into this. Do you know the context behind that arrangement?
I don't have the information.
The arrangement of Rocky Mountain Power, is that what you're referring to?
The arrangement where Orem joined what is called Wattsmart Communities with Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, so essentially this is a buyback program, not a buyback, a buy credit program. My understanding is customers buy credits of renewable energy, and it's solely opt-in. So once the city signs up for the program, then customers will have the option to buy energy credits for renewable energy.
Sarah, is that
I guess I wasn't familiar with that portion of it. I thought it was mainly focused on energy efficiency, upgrades and that kind of thing. But
yeah, maybe I have my wires crossed. I'll double check, make sure I'm not.
No, that's fine. I haven't learned a whole lot about it. I learned about it at another meeting, and I was pulled away, so I didn't get all of it. But so yeah.
Sarah, since I'm the energy person, I would be, if they're gathering to provide information, I would be happy to serve as that representative and report back to the committee once we have more information.
Okay, I will send them your name.
Thank you.
And then the second one I'll do is Darren reached out to talk about kind of a follow-up from last year's social media campaign where we did the, surviving 2020 Orem Outside series, and we had several posts that were crowdsourced from Orem residents about how they connect with the outside world and outdoor therapy and that kind of thing. And so, so Darren suggested kind of focusing this year on water conservation. And so I have been trying to think of ideas for this year's, again, kind of in the same category as last year, crowdsourcing some content, trying to get residents and businesses to share with everybody else what it is they're working on, their process. If, you know, xeriscaping in their yards, I'm gonna recycle one of an old post that we did on Darren's xeriscape yard to kind of kick it off. And so I was trying to think of a way to make it fun, and decided that I was going to try to combine water conservation and like pop culture, like movies and popular TV, and encourage people to come up with fun, like movie, like inserting water conservation into movie titles, or like a famous line from a movie. So right now I'm thinking like Save Ferris and My Water Bill or something like that. So it's silly, it's fun, and it's something that everybody can connect to. And so I was trying to think of, well, what do we title this series? You know, water conservation goes to the movies or film or cinema, something. So right now the working title is Water Feature. I will be putting that together, and I'll start with Darren's yard. And again, if other people have examples of some water-wise landscaping that we can feature, but I will put together another form and send that out as we create new posts, and hopefully we get more residents and businesses sharing, and then have lots of fun with you know, movie references and you know, driving Miss Daisy's water bill down. I don't know. Like, these are just the jumping off points.
Great.
Yeah.
Two questions. Number one is, unless I'm mistaken, I think we are going to be in a position in 2021 to have those smart meters rolled out more extensively this year. And so I'm wondering if we can kind of tie it in with that kind of information campaign. We kind of need to know the rollout on that.
Yeah, that would be great.
And then it would be really cool if you wanted to, or one of us wanted to have a conversation with the Beautification Commission.
Yeah.
To have them kind of get excited about like giving awards or showcasing a particular kind of beautification, right?
Yeah.
Which is also very environmentally healthy for us. I think that's an opportunity for collaboration.
Yeah, good idea. I will do that. And then oh, sorry.
Can I add something to this conversation quickly? Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, no worries.
This seems like a good opportunity to tell about some research that my students and I are doing. We're planning to do a survey in Orem about barriers to water conservation. And I was going to ask Debbie and also Matt if there was interest in collaborating, like if there's any data you are wanting to know about residents. But I'm just kind of like curious about why people aren't. Like, is it a cost? Is it knowledge? Is it education? How does it vary across different social groups? So kind of thinking about how different people have different needs when it comes to knowing about water-wise landscaping. And my urban geography class yesterday, we were just looking at beautification awards and thinking about what landscapes are deemed beautiful and whatnot. So that's so funny that you brought that up.
I can tell you that we have a Y2K Analytics is who we use for our surveys. And I'm not sure how many we get per year from them, but it's something we could certainly utilize the sample size that we currently have. I can't remember if you work with Stephen or Bren on that for the city administration, but we can see if we could develop a short survey. And it's a good cross section of Orem citizens.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was having some ideas of sample, how to go about sampling too, but that'd be awesome to tap into those networks.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't know if it's Bren or Stephen, but if you call up the city administration office, they can point you to the right person.
Okay, thanks.
Cool project.
And
Yeah,
by beautification, I think would love this award. Sean Aurelian, he does a lot of that. So I'm going to contact with Sean or Aaron, and they would be all over that to give a beautification for xeriscaping.
Yeah, and if you all have like things at the city level, if there's things, either Debbie or from the planning office, if there's things that you're wanting to know about the way that residents think about water conservation and general kind of landscaping practices, please let me know and I can collect that data for you also. Like, hopefully this can be a win-win.
Probably a call to Ryan Clark at Developmental Services would be good, or Jason Bench. They're kind of our go-to, but see with kind of, they develop the policies and the different features and different, they did our landscaping, xeriscaping.
Nice.
So talk to, it's called Developmental Services.
Okay, thanks.
You can certainly coordinate with me, Hillary.
Okay.
That's my reason for being here.
Okay, I'll email you then tonight or tomorrow. Thanks.
He's right.
Okay, then we have our annual report to the City Council coming up on the 23rd, I think. And it's an opportunity for us to share a little bit what we've been working on this past year and perhaps some goals for this year. Now, Quinn had asked if there might be an opportunity this year to, I mean, traditionally we've just kind of had our presentation and then we, you know, said thank you and that was that. So Quinn was wondering if there might be an opportunity, I don't know if this is the right opportunity, but to present and then have some dialogue with the council. I don't know how that works. Matt?
Yeah, and maybe just specifically, the question that I asked Sarah was, would this be an appropriate venue for us to say, you know, here are some things that we've thought about prioritizing this year. What are your highest priorities? And engage the council in a bit of reflection on what they would find value in from us working on this year.
Do you have any success getting to one of our work sessions? The reason I say that is a report to us is more of just a report. There's not a lot of time to do a lot of, you know, give and take. That's more of a work session.
Okay.
I know. So for us, maybe a question or two, but really to drill down to anything significant, we would have to do that in a work session.
Okay.
And so Debbie, what would be the right amount of time for us to be on the agenda for that?
A work session or presenting your year?
For the presentation on the 23rd.
5 minutes.
I see. Okay.
10 at the most.
All right. Well, it sounds like a work session would be something we could start to prioritize then.
Okay, so because of that and trying to keep things relatively simple and short on our presentation, these are just some of the slides that I'm sort of working. This is a draft. Obviously, it's not finished. I'd still love to get some photos to fill in those missing spots. So if you're willing to have your photo included in this year's, we'll add those in. Obviously, doing a Zoom theme as a way of introducing our committee. I used the same slide as last year as far as identifying the 3 different ways that we engage as a committee. One, sharing information, learning from the city, and also sharing with the city the kinds of things we're focused on. And then how we engage with Orem residents, and then any community partnerships that we have worked on. So here's an example of some of the things we've talked about from the various departments that we've had come and help present the smart water meters and working on that. At the brownfields, having representation from our committee sitting on that brownfields committee. And reaching out to council members, that's been another thing that has been, that the committee has been focusing on, to get to know the council better And then the employee green team, trying to build that was another thing we talked about. And then having the city engineer talk about the bike plan. And yeah.
Loving the visuals. That looks really like a nice set of slides, Sarah.
Thank you. This one might be too cluttered, but I was trying to decide if I just use one example from the Orem outside, but part of me kind of like the idea of showing the council that, you know, several residents engaged in this Orem outside series and submitted their photos and their stories that we shared on Facebook and Instagram. And so it was just kind of a fun human piece, very relatable, of how people found healing in the outdoors, especially last year. So the Orem Outside series was something that we did with residents, the Youth Earth Day Art Contest that we continued and was featured. And then the discussions we've had about trying to establish some kind of education station at the library, possibly. That's something we've talked about. I don't have visuals for this one yet, but these are some, you know, presentations that we've had that we've welcomed at our committee meetings, talking about energy and the lake, farmland preservation, and then the BYU student landscape designers and the partnership we had with the university. So
could we also flag in there that I guess it's a report of past activities, but do we have a slide talking about some of the things we're trying to do this year, including maybe our environmental awards and things like that?
Yeah, I haven't included that yet, but I will put some down. Awards for this year.
And maybe just in the interest of time, those of you who have ideas of things that you'd like, that you're working on, that you'd like to make sure end up on a slide that says some of our priorities for 2021, if you could just email those quickly to Sarah, and we can get those on a concluding slide. Debbie, from the council's perspective, is there anything that you'd like to see in particular in that presentation?
Just your ideas and how to, you know, encourage, especially water. We're going to try to lower our rates if we can build this tank in a reasonable time. Just conservation and lowering water rates. But one thing I want to make you aware of is we are designing, as we speak, we're getting public input to the new Hillcrest Park over by, we've purchased the Hillcrest Elementary School. If there is what I'm thinking is a water feature or something that would educate as part of a playground or a park, now is the time to weigh in. And like I said, I don't know all of those kind of features that's available out in the marketplace, but if you guys want to weigh in on anything at a park, because we're building it from scratch. I mean, we're going to keep part of the building, but please do, because we're collecting that as we speak, and it's going to be a major project for that area. So if there's how we seed it, how we landscape it, how we do features, be sure to weigh in so we can try to do.
That's a great flag. It seems like, Sarah, you in particular are going to have some ideas from our library project. We can kind of think bigger picture in terms of how we want to shape choices around the park. That's great. Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah, and please do it soon. Tonight, we're having 2 big public meetings, so we're gathering all the input in the next week or 2, and then we'll be deciding. So please weigh in on that.
Thank you. Anyone is welcome from the committee to participate on the 23rd. Like to have you join and participate. Is that possible to do? It's going to be it's not going to be a Zoom meeting per se, right?
We're all
my
Zoom
understanding
right now.
it will be a Zoom meeting. If you'd like, I think what we're asking is at least just one person from the committee to present. If you'd like to be on the call, let me know. Give me an email, mjtaylor@orem.org, and I'll see what I can do there.
Okay. Sarah, are you comfortable presenting this year?
I can, but I know I'm, kind of hogging it. So if anybody else is interested in presenting this year, I'm fine to
I'll
really.
check in with Darren on that and see if he has an interest.
Okay.
But, thank you for taking the lead.
Yeah.
I know that our time is about up. I'm wondering if we can just hit the last two items very quickly. Matt, do you have an update on a work session for us in terms of energy with the city council?
No, there hasn't been a response on that. I don't think. I think actually, sorry, I'm digging out the info here. I think what I got back was that a council member needs to sponsor that and ask the council to have that put on, and then they would schedule it. And that was.
Okay, I'll take the lead on that. I'm meeting with the city administrator next Monday, so I'll add that to my list.
Thank you, Debbie. Really appreciate your help with that. Sam is here with us. Those of you that might remember Sam, who's an intern with us of sorts for the next couple of months, thinking about our strategy for engaging businesses on their sustainability issues. Sam, we've probably got about 3 minutes. Would you like to share your screen and show what you're up to?
Yeah, I will share the survey that we've been working on right now. Yeah, so I was able to work a little bit on this. I think you guys can see it, hopefully. This survey that would be given out to local Orem organizations that are sustainably using natural resources. And so I was just hoping to kind of get a couple eyes on it, see what feedback you guys have as a committee, and make adjustments to it. The plan was to hopefully send it out by next week. That would require a little bit of social media advertising through Orem City Instagram or Facebook pages. I think Quinn told me that Sarah had a little bit of expertise and connections with that and would possibly be able to help me, but I don't know what your schedule is like, so I don't want to overload you.
No, just send me an email and we'll talk that way.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, this is just kind of the beginning page, just explaining what the project is. So I don't know if you guys want to look over that or if you have any feedback, but I can just kind of go through the rest of the survey.
Sam, I think it'd be really helpful if you wanted to shoot me the link to it, I can pass it on to the folks on the committee, and people can look it over at their leisure and provide feedback on wording or other things.
Okay, awesome. I will just plan on that then.
Do you want to show the questions though?
Yeah, I will. So here we go. These are just general questions asking name and address of organizations, contact information. And so these are asking employees in the organization, the size of the organization essentially, what type of organization they are. I know Quinn mentioned to me that the types of organizations should be a little bit more comprehensive, not so many categories. So I'm still trying to work on that. I actually added on a few others since we last met, Quinn, so that might have that definitely needs to be simplified a little bit. But and then the idea for the survey for this year was to be a little bit more open-ended and to just have the different organizations self-report what they're doing. And then if we find that they are doing things that are environmentally sustainable, we can reach out to them individually. So the 3 areas were for them to basically just self-report what they're doing to sustainably reduce energy consumption, water consumption, and reduce or recycling waste. And then I just added another question, just asking them what other sustainable use of natural resources they're doing as an organization. So that's essentially the survey. I'm wondering if there's any feedback that anyone has. If not, I can just send it out and get feedback that way.
I have a question of a possible question to include,
Yeah.
and that is if they are familiar, have heard of the Utah Sustainable Business Coalition.
Okay.
That was established by New Skin in Provo about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
And so they're gathering, they've been reaching out to the business community. So that could be another interesting point to gather
Okay.
how
Awesome.
much they're familiar with that.
Yeah, I could definitely add that. I just put down a note for that, and okay.
So I think the idea is that we would send the survey out in 2 different ways. So one would be to provide a link on social media, people who could respond, right, of their own interest. And then as we contact businesses, if they're interested in sharing with us, we'll send them this link so that they would have an opportunity to fill this out. So it wouldn't be cold calling all of the businesses, but it would be giving them a link through social media, and then also a follow-up email to any personal outreach. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
In the interest of time, why don't you send a link to that? I will pass it around right now to the committee. And if you all could take a look at this over the next couple of days and just go through the survey and see if you have any other insights or concerns, that would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's wrap it up. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve our minutes?
I so move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. And do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll move to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Good luck with those public hearings tonight, Debbie. They sound like they're going to be a lot of fun.
You guys can get on the city's website and join us.
All right.
Sounds great.
Thank you. What time do they begin?
One is going from now till 6:30. One starts at 6:30. So weigh in on either one.
Okay. Thank you for your time and have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.